Alright, so some of you guys may recognize this. I've done a couple of videos on this so far. This is my Franken 6.5 Grendel upper that I put together. It is a complete Franken upper. It's just some random stuff that I ordered and built and put together. But the reason I want to do this video is I've recently posted some videos on Instagram shooting this, and was asked by a couple of people for a parts list. You know, impressed with how well this thing is shooting. So I figured instead of just naming off a parts list, I would do a video on it, because there's a couple other things I want to talk about in the way that I went about accurizing, or the way I go about accurizing any precision gas gun that I'm putting together. There's a couple of extra steps that I take in assembling a precision gas gun that go a long way in assuring that you will get the most accuracy out of your precision gas gun, and it's all basically in the upper. So that's what we're talking about. So first we'll go through a parts list of this. We'll talk about how I accurize it as we talk about putting it together, and then we'll go out to the range, we'll shoot this thing, and we'll see how it actually performs. So if you guys have seen any of the videos, you'll know this is by all accounts, a half-minute or better gas gun. But I think what you guys would be really surprised in is how little I actually spent to build this gas gun. Like I said, in the last video about it, I really built this to have a hunting platform for an AR, and it became much more than that very quickly. So we'll start from the front and go back. So the heart of any precision gas gun is going to be a good barrel. So here we have, this barrel is cut from an ER Shaw blank. I ordered that, and I got a really good deal on this barrel. I ordered this barrel from Davidson Defense, and I've heard bad things about Davidson Defense. I've also heard some good things about them. I will say my experience with them was no problem at all. They advertised this barrel as just an ultra match barrel, which I think is kind of a silly term, matches match. But after doing some research and reading up on it, it's a ER Shaw barrel blank that they have cut in 6.5, or they have reamed and chambered in 6.5 Grendel. So knowing ER Shaw's pedigree, knowing how well their barrels shoot, I felt pretty safe in ordering a barrel cut from an ER Shaw barrel blank. So that's what this is, and I only paid $108.99 for this 20-inch 6.5 Grendel barrel from Davidson Defense. Like I said, a lot of people have problems with Davidson Defense. I think they have a couple of other businesses that are all tied together, like Delta Team Tactical and a couple of others. And some of them I've heard some sketchy things about, but I will say my experience with them was overall pleasant. I had no issues. So $108 for a match ER Shaw barrel. It's built, this is all assembled on a Aero Precision upper, and this is a Blim upper. So normally an Aero Precision upper is going to cost $85 to $90. This was only $63.74 for a Blim upper. And when I got this upper in the mail, my wife and I looked at this for probably 30 minutes trying to figure out where the Blim was, and finally she found the only thing that I can consider what they were calling a Blim, and it's actually covered up right now. But underneath this riser here, on the top rail, there is a tiny little bit of underfill where on one of the piece of the Picatinny rail where it did not completely form. Nothing that's going to affect the accuracy, nothing that's going to affect the performance in any way of the upper. So I've beat my stuff up fairly regularly anyway, so a little bitty piece of underfill in the upper is not going to hurt my feelings at all, especially to save $25 or $30. So this thing is the parts kit that I used to put this together. You would think I used a fairly expensive parts kit to put together a precision gas gun. That is not the case. I actually just ordered a DPMS upper parts kit, so a inexpensive $40 upper parts kit. You know, your dust cover, charging handle, all that stuff. Forward assist. So very inexpensive upper parts kit. It's got a DPM. I ordered a DPMS gas block, so like $7.50 for a DPMS gas block, and a DPMS rifle length gas tube. So another $17 for the rifle length gas tube. It's got a Brownell 6.5 Grendel bolt carrier group in it, $119.99, so $120 bolt carrier group in it. I have learned my lesson on gas guns about going with an extremely inexpensive bolt. The bolt carrier doesn't really matter, from what I've experienced. The bolt carrier doesn't matter as much, but the bolt definitely matters. Brownells makes good stuff, so I feel pretty confident in their bolt and bolt carrier group. And then an AIM Sports handguard. So AIM Sports handguards are fairly inexpensive. This is a 15-inch key mod. Key mods were a little bit cheaper, $62.75 for the AIM Sports 15-inch key mod handguard. And then the only other thing, I had this brake laying around. I can't remember exactly where it came from or how much it was, but it was not very expensive. So all that together to assemble this entire upper, $419.77. That's not including the muzzle brake, or the scope that's on here right now, obviously. But so to assemble this precision upper, $419.77. I've seen people spend a lot more money to assemble a precision gas gun upper and get a lot less performance out of it. So now we'll get into the few things that I do to when I'm assembling an upper to improve the accuracy, and they're very simple. The first and the main thing that I do is I shim between the barrel extension and the upper. Where the barrel extension goes into the upper receiver, there's almost always, and I've never seen there not be a little bit of a gap and a place where even when you tighten down the barrel nut, you can have just a little bit of play. So in any sort of precision rifle, the key is rigidity. The more rigid you can make a system, the less movement you can induce in that system, the more accurate that rifle is going to shoot. So I shim between the barrel extension and the upper receiver where it goes together. And a lot of people actually use shim stock, use just like a 1/1000th or 2,000th shim stock. I go cheaper than that, and this may be really surprising to some of you guys, but what I've always done, and it works just as well, I've never had any issues, I take a piece of a pop can and some tin snips, and I will cut off, I'll measure how long my barrel extension is, and then cut a small piece off of the pop can, which after measuring it, it is right around 2/1000 thickness. So right around the same amount as the shim stock. And then I will wrap it around my barrel extension as I insert it. And it will make it a little bit stiffer to insert. It's not going to go right in. So you will have to kind of work it in and go slowly with it. But that makes the system much more rigid. That makes the barrel and the upper a much more solid and cohesive piece. So that is the first thing that I do when assembling a precision upper. And like I said, you wouldn't think just a small piece of a pop can can make that much of a difference, but it really, really does. So the next thing that I look at is the gas tube here. So a gas tube, a gas tube is a pretty flexible piece, and a lot of times it's overlooked almost always in my experience. When somebody puts an upper together, they slide the gas tube in the hole and they don't think about it. Well, a lot of times that gas tube is touching somewhere, leaning up against one of the edges of that hole, and that in turn takes some of the free float out of the barrel. So one of the things that I do is I'll just do a bend very slightly, just kind of bend and push on the gas tube until I get it sitting in the middle, as in the middle of that hole as I can, so that it is basically free floated all the way around, and that will in turn give more free float to your free float barrel. So that is the second thing I do. And the very last thing that I do, and I actually don't have it on here right now, Actually, I take that back, I do. I usually use, for the most part, I will use just a rubber band, or like a very small rubber band, or in this case, I actually have some magnetic tape, which is it's a very thin piece of a magnet, and I use to shim up just the little bit of gap that you'll usually have between the upper and lower receiver. So on this one, and there are actually some products that you can buy that do this same thing, but I found that I can do them without having to spend any money and do it just as well. So like I said, a lot of times I'll use a rubber band or something and wrap it around the rear post, because normally it's the rear post I've found that has a little bit of play in it. Or if I'm really wanting to get into it and make it shimmed up solid, but I don't ever have to worry about it, don't ever have to worry about taking that rubber band off, I will use this magnetic tape, and it actually just sticks right to the upper. And on this, actually on this particular upper, the only thing I had to do was add a very small piece of magnetic tape to the front pinhole here, and that took out every bit of play between the upper and lower receiver. So those are the few things that I do that really make a big difference in how your gas gun will shoot. You wouldn't think those few little things can make a big difference, but they absolutely will. So now that we've talked about it, we've talked about a parts list, we've talked about what is in it, how much I spent, and this is not including the lower. If you want to know more about the lower that I use for this, you can go back and look at my my 224 Valkyrie video on my 224 Valkyrie mile maker video, and we talk about all the parts that are in the lower as well. It's the same lower that I use for both uppers. So now that we've done all that, let's take this thing out to the range and just see what a half-minute gas gun can do at 800 and 900 yards. So hope y'all enjoy. Can of shaving cream hanging in front of that IPSC. What is up with that? No, that's not right. There we go, that's better. Okay, that's better. So, here we go. 123 grain ELDs. It's hanging there right at the neck. Wow, we need a lot more wind. Yeah. Smashed it in two. 905. There's a big old splatter all over the target. I see the shaving cream blowing up now all over the ground. 2 shots. I underestimated the wind down there, thinking that it was not as much as it was. I've had really good data with this load, so I knew my elevation was right on. I saw where the bullet splashed, dialed over my exactly 2 minutes, which was what I measured with my reticle, like you guys have heard me talk about. And bam. It's one big plus of a gas gun, like I said before. Fast follow-up shots. There you can see the entrance, the exit. It caught it right in the top of the can left. It's a 12-inch plate, diamond-shaped plate. Can we get 2 rounds in the air simultaneously? So, get the second round off before the first round impacts. There we go. Yeah, baby. Yeah, this thing is shooting. Alright, one more here. Let's see. We've got that little tiny 3.5-inch plate there at 800. What do you think? Can we hit a sub half-minute target? Kind of like that. Yeah. That's a 6.5 Grendel that shoots, baby. That is a 6.5 Grendel that flat out shoots.